One element that I'm really loving about this third arc is the way that Tony Gilroy has reincorporated the Force back into Andor. In his first dive into Star Wars in Rogue One, there was definitely an element of the Force there with Chirrut Imwe, the temple defender, the Jedi temple guardian or steward there, who joined Andor in his quest. And then, of course, Darth Vader showed up at the end and he has his famous hallway scene, and we have his direct use of the Force. But even with Donnie Yen's character, Chirrut Imwe, we don't see him using the Force directly. And I really liked that back then. And I really like how there's a Force healer, and she kind of admits sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I also like the way that Tony Gilroy sort of gets the Force as an actual sort of spiritual force or philosophical force and a sort of essence of the Star Wars spirit in a way, more than some of the more nerdified Star Wars. And growing up, I was a kid, and we loved that nerdification of Star Wars, like seeing that there was powers. We played the old NES Star Wars game and Super NES Star Wars game, and you got little Force powers in those games. And we loved that stuff. And we loved the movies, and we loved Darth Maul when he came out, and that was cool. And The Rise of Skywalker, I think, took the Force, and the sequel trilogy, I think, messed up on a lot of ideas of the Force. But they all sort of deviated from the original expression of the Force in the original trilogy that George Lucas himself created. It really started to get more and more nerdified, I think, after that. And I'm not using nerdified as a pejorative here. Like, I am a nerd. I played all these games. I've watched a bunch of these shows. But I do think there is a point where trying to express the Force only in terms of what sort of cool, sort of magic fantasy powers does this give you, loses the point that Lucas had in his first trilogy. And I want to break that down a little bit and compare it to the sequel trilogy. And then I'll wrap up with how I think Tony Gilroy has done it really nicely. So in the original trilogy, the Force can be seen as an obvious power that they have to change someone's mind or move an object or something like that, or help Luke kind of jump and flip up and push things around. It is clear that it is represented as this magical power that they have. But the emphasis is much more on the spiritual or philosophical element and message, the theme that is trying to be represented through those films. And the theme is a very mythic one, the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey kind of story. The hero finds the darkness out in the world. He tries to fix the darkness out in the world, but he realizes there's darkness inside him, and he can't fix the darkness in the world until he fixes the darkness inside him. And so then he achieves balance and peace inside, and that lets him fix the darkness in the world externally. And we see this arc as Luke is sort of growing up, going through The Empire Strikes Back, and even up until Return of Jedi, where he has that rage outburst because Darth Vader suggests that Leia could be turned, and he, is viciously fighting Darth Vader back, pushing him back, and then he cuts off his arm, and Luke realizes he's doing to his father, spoilers for those that didn't know, what has been done to him. You're cutting off his hand and kind of letting a part of him become, a robot, become something, an augmentation of himself that's not himself. And at this moment, we see the true message of the Force being displayed. Instead of the powers of the Force being used to win, we see the philosophical argument that the Force represents, that George Lucas is trying to convey, win. Luke doesn't win and beat the Emperor by shooting his light side blast of energy against the Emperor's dark side blast of energy, and two violent blasts of energy clash, and there's like some Dragon Ball Z beam fight going on, or even like the good, holy, violent powers of the lightsaber that can cut people in half and kill people, blocking the evil, destructive powers, evil, violent powers of the Emperor of the dark side. It is literally the philosophical, deeper meaning and forces behind the Force that win the day. Luke actually wins by casting aside the thing that can be confused, the thing that can muddy the waters as violence. And he wins by resorting to peace, pacifism, balance, calmness, forgiveness, love, compassion. He resorts to these things and he says, I will not fight you. And he casts away his lightsaber. And in that moment, he is saying, I am not going to defeat you with light side force powers that are going to kill you and obliterate you because you're evil, and you're going to use your evil force powers to try to do that same to me. He is directly proving the philosophical point of the hero's journey and of the light side and the dark side of the force true. And it is what wins the day. He converts or redeems Darth Vader through these actual good philosophical principles, and Darth Vader, sacrificing that darkness of himself, lifts up the darkness that created him, casts it down into the reactor, into the pit, and that part of Darth Vader dies with the Emperor as he casts it down, as he expels it from his body. You can see the lightning in the skull reflecting the imagery is very visceral. He is expelling that dark side from him, and he has been redeemed. And it is literally the philosophical standing that the Force has in the original trilogy that wins the day. It is not combat. It is not a display of powers. And if you flash forward to the sequel trilogy, Rey and Kylo Ren, they defeat Emperor Palpatine by forming a superpower. Their power level raises over 9,000, and they are able to combat Palpatine back. And there's the Sith chanting, which is raising Palpatine's power level. But then they form a Force dyad, which raises their power level, and they shoot beams and block beams and do energy to each other. And even Yoda and Palpatine fought in like the prequels by like Yoda shoots his good beam and Palpatine shoots his dark beam, and the two beams clash and create a violent eruption. And they took the philosophical element and they nerdified it. And again, I enjoy the nerdification in ways, but I also enjoy the deeper philosophical meaning that Star Wars has. And what I really like is that Tony Gilroy has come back to a very subtle expression of the Force. It is not about powers. This Force healer has a vision or has a feeling is sort of given to her by the Force through Cassian that sort of reveals his role in this. And it sort of reveals that Cassian is put on this very tragic path to be sacrificed for the greater good, the will of the many being more important than the will of the single, the will of the few. And he is that one that the Force is eventually going to destroy, send it to his death. But I like that there is a subtleness to the Force, an unspokenness. And if Tony Gilroy decides to put some more of this subtle Force element into his final 3 episodes, I kind of made a joke video about Luthen being this like Jedi master because he has those like Sith and Jedi holocrons and some other stuff, some other suggestive things for the theory. Even if he does come out to be somehow connected to the Force or to Jedi in the past or something, and he did it in a subtle way that showed the sort of peaceful progression of the Force, not as this like magical power that people are harnessing, but as more of a flow through existence, through time, through people's lives that weaves back and forth to create a harmonious plan or to correct something that is disgustingly unharmonious, like a fascistic authoritarian empire. So I am anticipating these last 3 episodes and wondering if there is going to be another hint at something Force-like. And if there is, I'm hoping it's not some outward display of Force, but I'm hoping it's some sort of subtle expression of the Force's will to create harmony out of, suffering and disorder that the Empire brings to the universe. Not expecting anything, and I'm ready to accept anything he does because he's had forays into the Force and into non-Force before. So whatever it is, I'm going to love it. I'm already liking how he's brought this style of Force back that is more reminiscent of the original trilogy, that is about the philosophy of the Force and is less about the nerdification of the Force, however cool and entertaining that might be in some other adventure stories. I like that this one's more sincere and deeper and more about the human connection that the Force would have with us.